The voice said, "They're already here." The room went still. The sound wasn't from this earth, and everyone knew it. Alexander Reeves, 28, stood frozen in his apartment, one hand clutching the static blaring radio. His breath stopped. Time halted. A pulse of static hit again, this one deeper, alive somehow. Outside, a low hum grew louder as clouds churned violently. Thunder cracked like the sky was screaming. Alexander whispered, "No, this isn't real," but his voice was too small for what was coming. On the streets, people stood silent, phones raised, recording the impossible. In space, something massive shifted above Earth. Government towers blinked to life. Sirens wailed. At a press podium, a politician turned ghost pale as cameras flashed in blind panic. In a shelter, a mother clutched her child and sobbed. The voice repeated, "We've been waiting for you." Alexander fell to his knees, shaking. Not just fear, recognition. Something ancient had been awakened. The invasion hadn't started, it had already begun. Humanity was not alone, and they never had been. The voice said, "They're already here." The air in Alexander's apartment turned thick, like the walls themselves were holding their breath. The radio buzzed with static, but that voice had already ripped through him like a blade. It wasn't just sound. It was presence. Every hair on his skin stood up. He reached for the knob, hand trembling, but didn't touch it. What if turning it off made it worse? He stayed still, paralyzed. Outside, thunder boomed again. The wind had changed. It no longer sounded natural. "Who's here?" he whispered. No reply. Just a low throb, pulsing like a heartbeat. Then, silence. No radio, no thunder, no breathing. Then came the second message, clearer. "We've been waiting for you." The words wrapped around his spine like ice. Alexander's knees gave out. He sat heavily, eyes locked on the lifeless radio. The words echoed endlessly in his mind. He wasn't hallucinating. This was real. And whoever was out there, they knew exactly who he was. Alexander couldn't move. He stared at the radio like it was a living thing. The voice had pierced him, deeper than anything he'd ever felt. His thoughts scattered like leaves in a storm. He dropped onto the couch, spine bent, face buried in his hands. Was this a warning or a summons? His breath hitched. He remembered stories, folklore, conspiracy theories, things his late father had rambled about before losing himself to paranoia. "They're watching," his father once said. But not from above, from inside. At the time, Alexander had laughed. Now, the silence in the room was unbearable. A soft hum returned, rhythmic and unsettling. He didn't cry, he couldn't. Instead he whispered, "Who's here?" as if he already knew the answer but needed the world to say it back. The walls of his apartment pressed inward. Something had shifted, and Alexander felt it not just in his bones, but in his blood. The radio pulsed again, louder, sharper, then abruptly stopped. The silence it left behind was more terrifying than the sound. Then the voice returned, softer this time, deliberate. "We've been waiting for you." Every syllable landed like a hammer. Alexander stood slowly. The room felt alien, unfamiliar. He walked to the window, the floor cold beneath bare feet. Outside the city still shone, but something had changed. A glow in the sky pulsed green, unnatural. He rested his forehead against the glass, breath fogging it. In the distance, sirens wailed. The sky twisted like it was folding in on itself. "They've already arrived," he said softly. The words didn't feel like his own. The message hadn't just warned. It had awakened something buried, something watching. The transmission wasn't for Earth. It was for him. Alexander opened the window. A gust of wind rushed in, carrying the distant screams of the city. Sirens wailed in the distance. He leaned out slightly, looking at the skyline. Lights were flickering. Something massive moved behind the clouds. "It's starting," he muttered. His hand closed the window slowly, like sealing away a part of reality. Inside he backed away, heart pounding. He wasn't just hearing messages. He was being called. Every instinct told him to run, but to where? The voice had known him. The tone wasn't random. It was intimate, personal, waits, as if this had all been waiting for him to wake up. He stumbled to the door, hesitated, and looked back. His apartment, his life, none of it would survive what was coming. And he knew, deep down, neither would he. But the world would remember this night as the one where everything changed. Alexander hadn't slept. Dawn broke with no peace. The light outside was pale, washed out, like the sky itself was unsure whether to shine. He sat alone on the floor, knees to chest, staring at the now silent radio. His apartment was silent, but his mind was screaming. Every beat of his heart carried the voice. "We've been waiting for you." What did they want? Why him? He thought of his mother, long dead, and the father who vanished a decade ago. Always talking about signals, patterns, things Alexander once laughed off as madness. Now it wasn't funny. Now it made a cruel kind of sense. He grabbed a faded photo from a drawer. His father, younger than Alexander was now, standing beside a satellite dish. Underneath was scribbled, "They listen because we spoke first." Alexander clenched it. His family wasn't just collateral. They were part of this. The transmission wasn't random. It was legacy. And that terrified him more than the invasion itself. He walked the streets like a ghost. The city was changing too quickly. Posters with government insignias had appeared overnight. "Remain calm. Trust the signal." Military drones buzzed overhead. People avoided eye contact. Something had shifted in their faces. They weren't just afraid. They were expecting something. Alexander moved past closed storefronts and boarded windows. He overheard a woman whispering into her phone. "I heard it too. The voice." She noticed him listening and quickly turned away. He reached the edge of the quarantine zone, a checkpoint manned by soldiers, faces hidden behind masks, rifles at ready. He stepped back. If he was being watched, this is where it would begin. He turned and took an alley instead, heart pounding. They weren't trying to contain the panic. They were preparing for control. Whatever message the world received last night, it had already rewritten the rules. And Alexander? He was suddenly part of something he didn't choose but couldn't escape. He returned home to find the door slightly ajar. His breath caught. No sound came from inside. He crept in, heartbeat thundering. His apartment was untouched, except for the blinking light on the radio. It was red now. Not green. Not blue. Red. A message? A warning? He approached slowly, knelt, and pressed play. Nothing happened. Then a new voice emerged, female, sharp and steady. "Alexander Reeves, you are not safe. Leave immediately." His skin went cold. The voice wasn't alien. It was human. Familiar. He scanned the apartment. Nothing. A note slid under the door. He rushed to it. It read only one line. "They know what you are." He stood frozen. What was he? His family. The message? He had no answers, only panic. He grabbed a backpack, shoved essentials inside, and bolted. Whatever was coming, he couldn't face it here. The city was no longer home. It was a trap. And someone had just triggered it. Alexander fled to the only person he could still trust. His childhood friend, Lena. She lived in the industrial district, where old factories had become homes. She opened the door and pulled him in without a word. "I saw it," she said. "The sky, I heard it too." Her voice shook, but her eyes were steel. She had always believed in the fringe. Now, it wasn't fringe, it was fact. He told her everything, the messages, the photo, the red light. She nodded grimly. "You need to see something," she said, guiding him to a back room. Maps, files, printouts, satellite images. They've been landing for weeks, not ships, structures, anchors. He stared at the images, black towers piercing into the Earth's crust. She handed him a photograph of one. Your father helped build this. The blood drained from his face. He wasn't just connected to the invasion. His family had laid its foundation. Alexander sat at Lena's table, stunned. The realization crushed him. His family was part of this. His father hadn't been crazy. He had been involved. The towers weren't alien constructs, they were human-built, likely using alien knowledge. And if Lena was right, more were being activated. She pulled out a dusty cassette and inserted it into a battered recorder. "This is your father's voice," she said. The recording hissed, then a tired voice echoed, "If you're hearing this, it means they've come. I did what I had to. I didn't know the cost." Alexander covered his face. His father had warned him, just too late. "There's something in your blood, Alex," the tape continued. "A signal. They found us through it." Lena paused the tape. "They're not just coming for Earth. They're coming for you." Alexander's pulse raced. Everything he knew about who he was, his name, his memories, was just the surface. Beneath it was something alien. And it was waking up. The map Lena showed had one location circled in red, a rural compound deep in the northern forests, marked Project Meridian. Alexander recognized the name. His father had whispered it in his sleep when Alex was a child. They left the city that night. Trees closed in around them as they drove for hours. Snow began to fall, thin and quiet. The world seemed to hold its breath. They arrived at a chain-link gate, guarded by drones and sensor arrays. Lena hacked the lock. Inside, overgrown paths led to a rusted research station. Its power flickered, still alive. Inside were stacks of old data tapes, thick cables snaking into the ground, and a terminal login with the name R.R. Reeves. Alexander stared at it, stunned. This place wasn't abandoned. It was waiting. Lena whispered, "This is where it started." He stepped forward, fingers trembling as he typed his father's name. The screen blinked green. Access granted. The lab was coated in dust, but the machine still hummed faintly, alive, like old ghosts whispering. Alexander moved through the narrow corridor, touching walls etched with dates and numbers. Lena powered up a console. It displayed images, satellite footage, time-stamped transmissions, voice logs. One caught Alexander's attention. It was labeled, "First Contact, Reeves." He hit play. Static. Gosh. Then a voice, his father's, urgent, younger. "They came to us. We didn't find them. They offered knowledge, demanded silence." The recording shifted to a foreign tone, non-human, melodic and cold. Lena's face turned white. "That's the same voice from last night." Alexander staggered back. His father had spoken with them, documented it, collaborated. On the wall, a photo showed his father shaking hands with a humanoid silhouette cloaked in black. Beneath it, unity through obedience. Alexander turned away, nausea rising. His father hadn't warned humanity. He had joined its silence. Alexander backed into a corner, shaking. "He lied to me, my whole life." Lena didn't answer. She was scanning files, face drawn tight with focus. "Look at this," she said. A schematic filled the screen. Alien tech integrated into human satellites, labeled Neural Sync Interface. The purpose? Global signal conditioning. Alexander read the description aloud. Preliminary mental sync. Long-term influence pending activation. It hit him like a blow. The signal wasn't just communication. It was infiltration. Thought, belief, memory, shaped by frequency. Lena looked him dead in the eye. "Your father helped them build a mind control network." Alexander paced the room, unable to breathe. Why would he do that? Lena held up a folder. Inside was a birth certificate, his. Stamped in red, classified genome. "Because you weren't just his son," she whispered. "You were part of the experiment." The room swam. Nothing was real. Not even him. Lena found a hidden passage behind a cabinet, descending into a deeper vault. The walls were lined with containment units, half alien, half mechanical beings suspended in stasis. Alexander walked past them slowly, heart pounding. One opened its eyes. He staggered back. The being resembled him, human face, slight alien features. It was younger. Its gaze followed him. On a nearby panel it read, "Subject Echo, Genetic Prime." Lena whispered, "They're not soldiers. They're prototypes." Further in, another chamber revealed old test logs with his father's signature. Echo successful. Subject Reeves shows stable hybrid integration. Alexander felt like the floor vanished beneath him. He wasn't just chosen. He was built. Designed. The voice on the tape hadn't been calling to humanity. It had been calling to its creation. And now, its creation was listening. Alexander couldn't speak. Lena approached carefully. "You okay?" He didn't answer. He touched the glass. The hybrid version of himself blinked. It felt impossible. He turned and whispered, "They made me to be something." Lena nodded. "But you still choose what that is." He clenched his fists. "They've already activated the others, haven't they?" She pulled up a satellite feed. Across the globe, red lights blinked into life. At every anchor site. "It's begun," she said. "The network is sensing." Alexander felt heat pulse in his chest, like something buried deep was responding. Not fear. Power. He turned to Lena. "If they built me as a weapon, I'm going to be the one they regret." Lena smirked faintly. "Then let's tear their network down." For the first time, Alexander wasn't running. He was rising. Not because he understood who he was, but because he would define it himself. The cold night air bit through their jackets as Alexander and Lena emerged from the underground facility. A strange vibration thrummed in Alexander's chest, like his blood was echoing a signal. Lena noticed it too. "You're sensing with the network," she said. "It's not just communication, it's alignment." They had no time to lose. They loaded a van with salvaged data and weapons from the lab. Their destination. A rogue tech cell rumored to have hacked alien systems. Halfway there, an alert lit up Lena's tablet. "Someone's tracking us," she said. Alexander looked out the window. A convoy was tailing them, black, unmarked vehicles. "We've been compromised." Lena swerved into a tunnel. Lights flickered. A voice crackled through the van's speakers, calm, cold, and familiar. "Stop running, Alex. You're already where you belong." It was Jonas, Alexander's childhood friend, presumed dead. But his voice was synthetic now. Twisted. Changed. "You were never meant to run. Only to obey." They barely made it out of the tunnel before the convoy opened fire. Bullets ripped into the van's frame. Lena swerved hard, tires screaming against wet asphalt. Alexander reached for a stolen alien device in the back, a pulsing cube. He didn't know what it did, only that it reacted to him. "Do something," Lena yelled. He pressed his palm to it. The cube flared, and a wave of electromagnetic force exploded outward. The nearest SUV flipped violently. The rest swerved off-road. "What the hell was that?" Lena asked. Alexander didn't answer. His veins pulsed with heat. The cube had drained him, but it responded like instinct. A shadow of control. "They won't stop," he muttered. "They'll keep sending people I know." Lena looked at him. Then we hit back. They veered off the road, van smoking. A distant city blinked on the horizon. Their only chance now. The rogue cell known as Ghost Signal. The Ghost Signal hideout was buried beneath an abandoned hospital in the outer districts. The walls dripped with mold and rust, yet scanners and alien code pulsed behind cracked tiles. Inside, masked figures studied glowing screens. A woman stepped forward. Yara, leader of Ghost Signal, early 40s, scarred and calculating. "We've been watching you, Alexander," she said. "You're not just synths to the network, you are part of it." She waved him forward. Let us show you. On the screen, a map of Earth shimmered. At its center wasn't a tower. It was a DNA helix. They're not invading, she said. They're activating. You're a beacon. A living key. Alexander stepped back. I didn't ask for this. Yara smiled coldly. It doesn't care what you ask. The network didn't want destruction. It wanted assimilation. And he was its interface. If they couldn't stop it, it would rewrite humanity, through him. Lena pulled Alexander aside. We can't trust them, she hissed. They're using you like the others. Alexander rubbed his temples. Dear. Alexander rubbed his temples. He felt something, an internal signal, getting louder. Then what do I do? She answered, fight the connection. Yara re-entered, holding a syringe. This blocks the signal temporarily, she said. But it will hurt. Alexander didn't hesitate. He took the injection. Pain lit up every nerve. For a moment, his vision blurred. But the voice, the network, faded to silence. And with it, a memory surfaced. A hidden lab. His father, Jonas Dutt. And a contract signed in alien blood. He dropped to the ground, gasping. Lena helped him up. What did you see? He looked at her, terrified. They've been planning this since before I was born. Yara frowned. You accessed a memory node. That shouldn't be possible. Alexander's voice cracked. Maybe I'm more than just a key. Maybe he was the door. Yara paced. If you access the core memory, there's more buried inside you. Direct links to the primary source. Lena demanded. Then help us extract it. Yara nodded slowly. We'll use a neural lens. Dangerous, but possible. Alexander lay on the table, wires connecting his temples to alien nodes. If I go too deep, he asked. Yara replied. Then you may not come back. The machine powered on. Images flashed. Stars, languages, pain. He saw Jonas again, alive, transformed, speaking to an alien council. He volunteered, a voice whispered. He betrayed Earth for purpose. Then came the image that shattered him, his father injecting infant Alexander with glowing liquid. You were born to be the bridge, the voice said. Alexander screamed, and the machine cracked. Lights burst. Lena ripped the cables out. He gasped awake, trembling. They didn't just make me, he said. They programmed me. Yara stared. Then it's time we rewrite that code. Alexander stood on the rooftop of the ghost signal outpost, watching black spires pulse in the distance. They weren't just towers, they were amplifiers. Every hour, the signal spreads deeper, Lena said. Governments are collapsing or turning. Alexander clenched his jaw. Then we bring the towers down. Yara interrupted. You can't destroy them, but you can hijack them. Alexander turned. Using me? She nodded. They were tuned to your genetic frequency. Only you can override them. It was a suicide mission dressed as a solution. And if I fail? He asked. Yara shrugged. Then, Earth becomes a node, not a world. The silence that followed was deafening. Alexander looked at Lena. You trust me? She nodded. I trust you more than I trust any machine. He turned toward the horizon. Then, I go in. He wasn't fighting for Earth anymore. He was fighting for the right to choose who he was. They approached the nearest tower through a ruined city. Streets burned with abandoned vehicles, glowing windows flickering like haunted eyes. Drones circled above, scanning. Lena drove while Alexander held the cube close to his chest. It pulsed in rhythm with his heartbeat. We're almost inside the field, Yara said through comms. Prepare for pushback. As they neared the base, nausea hit Alexander. The tower was alive. It breathed. Alien runes crawled up its obsidian surface like veins. They stopped just short of the perimeter. Lena handed him a neural stabilizer. Just in case you lose yourself. He nodded and stepped out. Static rippled across his skin. Each step closer to the tower made the air denser, thicker. The signal didn't repel him. It welcomed him. That was what terrified him most. The tower knew him, and it was ready to be awakened. Inside the tower, Alexander was swallowed by alien light. The walls shimmered with memory, his memory. Flashes of his childhood, coded instructions, whispers implanted in dreams. The tower wasn't a building, it was a vessel of identity. A massive organic interface, reading him in reverse. He touched a pillar and it opened like a blooming flower. At its core was a chair, half machine, half organic. Sit, the voice said. Not spoken, felt. He hesitated, then obeyed. Tendrils wrapped his arms. Pain stabbed into his skull. Every thought was dissected. But instead of losing himself, he saw through the network. Cities. Ships. Mines. Buildings. And at the center, Jonas, sitting in another tower, watching him. You finally made it, Jonas said. Welcome to the network, brother. Alexander gritted his teeth. I'm not your brother. I'm your reckoning. Jonas only smiled. Then let's begin. The tower reacted violently. Lightning burst through its spires. Across the world, towers surged to life. Yara screamed through comms. They're sensing. Lena tried to break in, but the system rejected her. Inside, Alexander was locked in mental combat with Jonas. Not with fists, but with memory, belief, identity. You were made to ascend, Jonas said. To unite what is fractured. Alexander fought back with every ounce of his humanity. He pushed images of love, loss, truth into the stream. The network tried to overwrite him, but his emotions corrupted its logic. A rupture formed. You're flawed, Jonas shouted. You're resisting perfection. Alexander grinned. Perfection doesn't feel. I do. With one final surge, he seized control of the main conduit. Alarms rang. The towers flickered. He screamed as power rushed through him, not burning him, but becoming him. He wasn't just overriding the signal, he was rewriting it. Across the world, towers shut down. The signal died. Screens went dark. Satellites dropped. Silence blanketed the earth. Lena stood outside the tower, eyes wide. He did it, she whispered. Inside, Alexander collapsed to the floor, steam rising from his skin. The chair dissolved behind him. The alien systems were offline, dormant. He emerged, barely able to stand, eyes glowing faintly. Lena ran to him. Are you still? You? He nodded slowly. I think so, but I remember everything now. In the sky, fragments of alien ships blinked out. Some retreated. Others fell. Ghost's signal confirmed. The global override was successful. Humanity was free, but the cost was high. Alexander sat beside Lena on the vehicle's hood. They'll come back, he said. Next time, they won't hide behind towers. Lena replied, then we'll fight in the open. The illusion was shattered. The war hadn't ended. But this chapter had been written by human hands. The world didn't celebrate. It held its breath. The towers were down, but the silence that followed was louder than war. Ghost Signal's headquarters was now a triage center. Engineers rebuilding, soldiers debriefing, refugees huddled in every corner. Lena stood at a data terminal. No retaliation yet, she said. Alexander, still weak but standing, looked out over the ruined city. They're waiting, he said. They're watching how we react. Yara approached, tablet in hand. There's more, she said. A signal, originating from deep orbit. Not the network. Something older. Alexander felt it before she showed the data. A pulse, steady in his chest. They've sent the source, he said. Lena asked, the ones who made the network? Alexander nodded. They're coming to finish what they started. He looked around the command center. Then we don't wait. We go to them. The final decision was no longer if they'd fight, it was how much of their humanity they'd sacrifice to win. They gathered the last resistance factions, engineers, hackers, former intelligence, and even defectors from the government's alien-aligned units. Around a massive table in an underground silo, Alexander laid out the plan. This isn't just survival, he said. This is interception. Lena detailed the data stream. So, there's an orbital gate being powered up. If it completes, they'll send something permanent. A scientist stood, pale. If we breach the gate, we could shut it forever, but it means launching from the dead zone. Yara nodded. Too dangerous for most tech. But you. She looked at Alexander. You can survive it. Everyone knew what that meant. He'd have to interface directly again, one last time. Alexander closed his eyes. Then I'll go. But this time I choose what gets through. His voice was quiet, but every word rang with steel. They weren't following prophecy anymore. They were writing their own. The launch site was buried in radioactive ash. The dead zone stretched miles, silent, gray, and watched. Ghost Signal's stealth skiff hovered low, kicking dust across blackened trees. Alexander stood at the hatch, armored suit pulsing with faint alien circuitry. Lena adjusted his neural dampeners. You sure about this? She asked. He smiled faintly. Not even a little. She kissed his forehead. Then you'll do fine. The skiff touched down. He stepped into ash. The gate shimmered above like a crack in the sky. You'll have 90 seconds to breach before the lock activates, Yara's voice said through comms. After that, it's one way only. Alexander stood before a skeletal launch tower. No support crew. No backup. Just him, a stolen interface rig, and an untested weapon, his mind. He climbed aboard. Let's see if they're ready to meet their mistake, he whispered, as the engines lit with alien fire. The pod broke through atmosphere like a burning comet. Inside, Alexander screamed, not in pain, but in resistance. The gate pulsed ahead, its design impossibly vast, like a fractured moon stitched by light. His mind fractured and reformed in milliseconds. Alien commands tried to override him, but he countered with memory, with feeling. Love, loss, freedom, these were his weapons. At the threshold, the ship cracked apart, revealing Alexander wrapped in radiant energy. The gate opened like an iris. He floated forward, not just human anymore. On the other side, a void filled with cities, beings, machines, alive but unfeeling. At the center, a throne of glass and fire. A figure sat on it, tall, expressionless. It opened its eyes. We built you, it said. And now I'm unbuilding you, Alexander replied, and released the override. The gate screamed as reality bent around them both. There was no explosion, only silence. The gate vanished. Earth went dark for 7 seconds. When systems returned, the orbital signal was gone. Lena stood in the command center, breath held. Did he? A screen lit up. One message, free. No trace of a return signal. No energy spike. Just peace. Ghost Signal declared the breach closed. Across the globe, towers crumbled to dust. People emerged into light. The threat was gone, but so was Alexander. A week passed. Then Lena found something. A single glowing shard of the alien cube, pulsing, steady. She smiled through tears. He's not gone, he just became something else. In the sky, stars burned a little brighter. Somewhere, far beyond the edge of known space, a signal echoed, not of conquest, but of warning. The creators had met their creation. And Earth, fragile but free, had survived the judgment of gods. The world was quiet, but not empty. In the days that followed the collapse of the towers and the vanishing of the gate, Earth held its breath, and then began to breathe again. Governments slowly reformed, cities reopened, skies cleared. But beneath that surface, there was a fracture, deep, unseen, but undeniable. Lena walked the streets of New Berlin, once a hotbed of alien-aligned control, now under civilian reconstruction. Murals of the towers being shattered covered the walls. Children played in rubble gardens. But every eye she passed carried something changed. They'd all heard the signal. They'd all felt it. Some still dreamed in binary. Ghost Signal had disbanded, its leaders scattered, its tech buried. Yara disappeared. But Lena remained, grounded in memory. Alexander's shard pulsed in her hand like a quiet heartbeat. "They think it's over," someone said behind her. Lena turned. "It's not," she replied. "It's just quieter now." Lena met with the Provisional World Council. Scientists, philosophers, survivors. No military uniforms. Just people trying to understand what had happened. "We can't explain the signal," one man said. "It rewrote the laws of physics in several known systems." Lena placed the glowing shard on the table. "This is the last piece of it," she said. "But it doesn't control anymore. It listens." The council leaned in, watching it pulse. "He became something they didn't expect," Lena added. "Something they feared." Silence followed. Then a woman said, "And if they return?" Lena answered, "Then we remember what made them afraid." The shard pulsed faster, reacting to her words. Lena looked at it and smiled sadly. "He's still out there, and if he can hear us, he knows he didn't just save the world. He reminded us why it matters." Somewhere far beyond Earth, in the vast cold silence between galaxies, something stirred. A satellite long believed destroyed suddenly blinked to life. Its screen showed static, then a voice, "Signal breach acknowledged. Rebuilding will commence." But another voice overrode it, calmer, deeper. "No. Let them be." Inside the data stream, Alexander's consciousness hovered like a ghost in a machine. He was not body anymore. He was presence, signal, thought. He drifted between stars, no longer alone, but no longer what he was. The network had become a quiet space, a place for him to think, to watch, to protect. He wasn't their puppet. He wasn't their soldier. He was their echo. He had changed the code. And now he watched from beyond, waiting, listening, learning. The war was over, but vigilance had just begun. And Earth, for the first time in 1,000 years, had a silent guardian. Lena returned to the rooftop where it all began. The air was cleaner now, the skyline less hostile. She stood alone, wind tugging at her coat, watching the last construction drone dismantle what was left of the towers. "You changed us," she whispered. "You gave us choice again." She reached into her pocket and pulled out the shard. It pulsed once, then dimmed. "Good night, Alex." Behind her, a young girl approached. "Miss Lena," she asked, "do you think he was afraid?" Lena smiled. "Yes, but he didn't let it stop him." The girl nodded, then ran off, leaving Lena alone once more. She looked up at the stars, no longer symbols of threat, but of something more. Possibility, curiosity, and, maybe, reunion. If he ever returned, it wouldn't be as a weapon. It would be as something better. Human, still. The final image is stillness. Alexander walks alone across a vast, impossible landscape of pure signal, light and data forming mountains and rivers. He is barefoot, clothed in a simple cloak, older now in spirit, ageless in form. A voice whispers, "You chose well." He doesn't respond. He walks. In the distance, faint structures appear, glimpses of other civilizations, other echoes. His journey isn't over. It's just transformed. He pauses, looking back. Earth is a dot of light far behind him. He smiles. "The truth has a price," he says. "But the future is worth it." As he vanishes into the stream, the camera pans out, further, wider, until everything blurs into a calm, glowing silence. The story doesn't end. It expands. Because the war was never just about Earth. It was about what came next. And Alexander, was the beginning of that next chapter.